Coffee, dog. No dog, still working on that. There was a time Socrates was asked, how did you become so wise? And he said, I became wise by realizing I was a fool. I am not a great leader. Not a great leader. I hope that I'm a good leader, but maybe I have times where I'm great. But what I meant to say is that I'm not a great reader. Um, I So it would appear that I'm not qualified on how to make you a great reader if you're not. But chances are, if you're interested in this topic, you're not a great reader. And you're looking for someone who might be able to give you advice on how to become a great reader. And I think the best person to ask is the person who wants to be and has put in the work to try to become a great reader. Maybe I am a great reader. I know that I'm not, though, because I have been around people who are. All right. And they can read, like my wife is a great reader. She can read way faster than me and comprehend it. That's what I think a great reader would be, though. However, if you look at where I began and where I am, you you might be tempted to think that I, in fact, am a great reader. And the question is, can I make you a great reader? I don't know that I can. I'm not sure. I will say this: if you have certain disabilities, I don't think I can be much help to you. I have a friend of mine that has a very strange disability. I'd never heard of it before, where when he goes to read, he can't actually see the words that are there. And he cannot, once his mind makes up that the word says whatever it says that it is, even though it's not the actual word that's on the page, he doesn't see it any other way. So I can't, like those type of learning disabilities, I can't help. But I have my own share of learning disabilities. And the advice that I have, you can put into practice today. You should put into practice today. You shouldn't wait another day. Because it's just so easy. And some of it's very old-fashioned advice, okay? But it's my own technique that I made up. Technique. It's way more sophisticated of a term than I probably should be using. So let me get to the chase here so this video isn't too long. I'm going to tell you a story. And this is how I hope to sell you on how you can become a great reader and read a ton of books. I was sent to a place called Spalding University when I was a kid this one summer. I had to go all summer long. My dad just kept calling it summer school. I was like, okay, I guess I didn't get, good enough grades. I didn't realize it, but I was held back quite a few times in school because of my reading skills. And at the end of that summer, he came to me and he says, well, you have two big problems you have to overcome. You have to overcome dyslexia and ADD. ADD, if you don't know, is attention deficit disorder. Today it's called ADHD, but at that time, this was a very long time ago. And dyslexia is where you see the words backwards. I, to this day, can still catch my mind seeing a word backwards, which means it's pretty severe. But here's the thing. I'm not sure how the best way to approach someone that has these kind of learning disabilities. Because when you tell them that they have these disabilities, it is quite possible that some people will respond, okay, I got to really strap on my boots here and get going. Then there might be other people, the way they respond is, well, I guess I'm out of luck. Now, back then, the way they dealt with these kind of problems is they just didn't give you timed tests. Your tests just weren't timed. That was really it. That was the only. Today, I have much better techniques. So, but I'll tell you how I responded. I basically was like, well, look, I guess reading is just something I'm probably wasting my time trying to do. I'm not going to do as much of that. And I didn't read for years. And what happened was I was in middle school and there was a book series that was very, very popular. It was called Dragonlance. Fantasy book series. If you like fantasy, I do recommend this book series. It's very good. But at the time, it was mainly girls reading 20s. There was just, at least in my school, middle school, there was just a ton of females reading these books. I knew there were a bunch of them. And I kept noticing something. I kept noticing their place marker was at a certain point in the book. Every time I saw them with that book, I would look at the place marker and just look, how far are they? Are they getting halfway through? And I started to think, I wonder what that's like. What is that like to be halfway through a book or getting close to the end of a book? Does it consume your mind? Do you think about it all day? When you come back, does it feel good to come back to a story like this? Or I hadn't known, because I'd never read a book like that. And I didn't know it, but I was coming very curious about reading. And this was my 8th grade year, I believe. It could be my 7th, I'm not sure. And Timothy Zahn did the first of his trilogy sequel to Star Wars, to Return of the Jedi. And was it Heir to the Empire? Or maybe that was the 2nd or 3rd book. Can't remember. Anyway, it was the first book. And I remember thinking, well, they'll never sequel Star Wars. And I wish that remained true. But I thought, they'll never sequel Star Wars, so this is as close as I'm going to get. So that summer, I was like, all right, I'm going to read this book. But there was a problem, okay? I'm not going to do it. I can't read. I'm not a good reader. I could read. I'm so slow. And it was obvious I was slow. And I was like, you know what I think I'll do? Before I go to bed, I'll just read for 10 minutes every day. And who knows, maybe in a year, I'll be done with this thing. It's like a 350-page book, and I'm hoping to be done in a year. So that summer, I started at 10 minutes reading every night before bed. And it grew to 15 minutes. And then it grew to 20, 25 minutes, 30 minutes. And then I was going to bed kind of early just to read. And then some days I'd read an hour or two. And that book is a good book, although it has some long, drawn out descriptions that are a little boring. But still, I remember every word of that book. I just remember it really well. And I got done by the end of the summer. It took me 2 months maybe, but I got done. And when it was over with, I remember thinking, wow, it was really enjoyable. The next book I think was already out. And I was getting ready to, I thought, with school and everything, I'll go back. I'll go back next summer and do it again. And the next summer I went back and read the next book. And then it became kind of my thing. I just read before I went to bed. There was no smartphones. I didn't have a TV in my room. Had a little light, just turned on and started reading. And did this for years. Now, when I was in my early 30s and I started working at this job, there was a girl there who was in school. She was in her early 20s. Very well read. Had a new book every week. New book every week. I had about 10 years on her. And we talked about books. And she never mentioned a book that I hadn't read. After all those years of reading a half hour a day every day, at least, I had read tons of books. And I look back on it, I've just read a lot of books. And I didn't have to put that much time into it, to be totally honest with you. And it made me a faster reader. I'm still very slow. It made me decide what I wanted to read. It made me a better, it taught me how to choose authors, looking at what they read. Do they speak to me? A lot of times when people have learning disabilities, if they don't like a book, they blame themselves. They say, I guess it's me. No. I learned that's not always the case. Some authors just don't speak to you. Stephen King as an author just speaks to me. I can read. And that's another thing. Some books I would read lightning fast. If it was a really Homer Hickham's October Sky or Rocket Boys, I read that done in no time. Like just boom. And there were a couple times where, I'd have a little bit of time to sleep. Like, all right, I got to get this half hour in real quick before I go to bed. And then I just didn't go to sleep. I just read. Because the book was so good. And I was so curious what was going to happen. October Sky, that happened several times where I missed sleep because the reading was so great. And you can do this. There's no reason unless you have a really prohibitive disability, you can do this. And you can read a ton of books. Just doing this. Now, there's a couple catches. This video's already gone longer than I'd hoped. The first catch is this. You have to do it every day. Can you skip a day? Sure. Can you skip time reading? Yeah, you can. I mean, there's no question. You can skip time. But if you want to read a ton of books, this has to become part of your life. If you make it part of your life, you will love it. You will not want to skip that half hour, 10 minutes reading. And by the way, start short. There's no shame if you can only go 5 minutes, go 5 minutes. If you have to put your phone in another room, put your phone in another room, whatever it takes, but just select a time that works for you. And if you can only go 5, go 5. But if you do it every day, this process will begin taking over, whether you like it or not, and you will start reading more. Next pitfall, you've probably experienced this. There's going to be times where you have read 2 pages and you've thought about what you're going to eat for dinner. You're still reading the words, but you're thinking about what you're going to eat for dinner, this or that or the other, blah, blah, blah. And you got done and goes, what did I just read? I have some suggestions about this. The first thing is this. Keep reading. If you don't want to go back, don't go back. Keep reading. Sometimes it's because it's bad writing. Sometimes it's bad writing, you check out. I had a book I read one time that the droning of the air conditioning distracted me from the book. It was so bad. I read that whole book. Your first few books, don't be picky in terms of, hey, by page 100, if this isn't getting good, I'm going to stop. Keep reading. Just do it. Just keep reading. I'm going to select an arbitrary number. Your first 5 books. Your first 5 books, read all the way through. I do recommend short books at first, 200 pages, 300 pages. To you, if you were like me, 300 pages sounds like a lot. It does. It's to this day sounds like a lot. Although I read The Stand by Stephen King, the updated version, which was like 1,400 pages, 1,200 pages, and I read that in just a few weeks. But it was so good that in the afternoon I would go out in the front porch and read. I mean, it was that good of a book. But point here that I'm trying to make is, you won't keep track how many books you're reading. You just probably won't. But you will read a ton of books. I promise you. And you will become a better reader. One last pitfall. Even if you don't like doing it, read because you're going to fall in love with the process. You right now, if you're like me and you struggle with reading, you're not going to love the process. It's going to be work. It's going to be labor intensive for you. And that process isn't fun at first. But what ends up happening is you end up really enjoying that. You end up really loving it. And so don't plan on reading for someone else. Like you may say this. Well, when I go to college or, when I take this course or whatever, and I'll have to do a lot of reading then, you'll hate reading. Reading for someone else is no good. This has to be done for you. This is for you. It's a one-on-one thing between you and that author. And you have to learn how to, don't worry about how many books you're reading. Don't worry about what you're getting out of the process. Just keep reading and you will fall in love with the process. It will happen. You will eventually love reading. It will happen. All right. Too long a video, way too long. Not what I didn't intend for it to be this long. But I hope that if you've been wavering about whether committing yourself to a book, some people, that's a foreign idea to them. That why would you waver? Just read the thing. And I know what it's like. It's really hard to get in there and get it sometimes. But you got to start. You just got to start. Half hour a day. Try to make that your goal to get to half hour a day. And you will never regret it. It'll take a very short period of time, probably less than a year, before you're thinking, what did I do before I did this? It's great. Have a good one.